We are live with the Short Term Rental Pros podcast. Today, we are doing our second episode of our Techvestor trifecta series. I was joking with Sabrina earlier that this was not planned at all. I did not mean to talk to everyone at the team at Techvestor back to back to back. It just, I happen to be friends with a lot of them, and it really just aligned that way. But you guys are in for a treat today because Sabrina is the operational wizard behind, in my opinion, probably the most successful short-term rental fund ever. I can't think of another one that's definitely done what you guys. And I feel like I've had the opportunity to see what you guys have done and everything that you guys have learned, and really through talking to John and just honestly seeing your damn profile all over the damn place keep popping up on Airbnb. But Sabrina, first of all, thank you so much for coming today, and tell us about your background. What'd you do before short-term rentals, and how'd you get into STRs?
Yeah, for sure. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. Jeremy and I met a few years ago through TikTok, through mutual friends, colleagues. I don't even remember. And here we are 2 years later, and we're both still in the business, thriving. So I really appreciate you having me on. Prior to Techvestor, my story. So I'm one of the co-founders of Techvestor. Seif and I started the business in July 2021. So it's crazy that we're coming up almost on 3 years now. But I have a project management background. So I used to actually work for Apple, and I was a engineering project manager. I focused on building AirPods products. And I really had no foot in real estate, at least from the operational point of view. I was just a passive investor. I was involved in super typical multifamily deals. And during COVID, when we were going through quarantine and all that chaos, I came to Arizona from San Francisco. My parents lived here. And I looked into buying my own properties, renovating them, and being very hands-on. And because of the uncertainty with COVID and me still living in San Francisco and my parents being located in Arizona, I actually thought that the best thing for me was to buy a short-term rental, because it gave me a lot of flexibility, and it allowed me to come and go whenever I pleased, and also have a place that kind of felt like home outside of my parents. And so I during COVID, I came here on a whim. I started buying properties. I really immersed myself in a lot of different types of real estate before fully committing to Airbnb. I looked at multifamily. I got my real estate license just to learn like the science of real estate, contracts, and all that. I hung my license with a commercial brokerage. I had hotel listings for sale. I ended up joining a ton of meetup groups, multifamily groups. Like I really looked at all of it, and I started asking myself, like, what part of real estate do I really enjoy? And I think with my project management background, I've always had like an eye for operations and process and people and building things to scale. That's what I did in my prior role, was I built teams to build products. And so design and the tangible things that make real estate incredible has always been my thing. And so when I started investing in Airbnbs, I always love asking this question. I'll probably ask you this, like, what was your favorite part of the journey? So like when you first buy your first property, you're researching, you're doing the data, you're underwriting, and then you go through the whole story up until you list it. And for me, I loved the research part, like amenities and learning what makes a property successful, and then the implementation of it and really bringing it to life, the before and afters, the coordination of things. And so when I started scaling my own personal portfolio, I'm not really a social media person. Now I am, because I feel like I'm now sharing my story. But a few years ago, I was never on social media. And I decided, while I was working for Apple, TikTok was kind of a new thing. Like, we're like in 2020, everyone thinks TikTok's about dance stories and teenagers. And I was like, I'm going to start talking about real estate on here and get real-time feedback as to what other people were feeling about, Airbnb and that market. And one of my videos actually went viral, And that was the time when like on TikTok, you could go viral easily. And I ended up meeting my business partner, Sif, the other co-founder of the business. And we both had
Did you
very
meet him
similar.
through TikTok? Did he reach out to you because he saw your TikTok?
So yeah, so on TikTok, I
Oh, I
had
didn't
like,
know that. That's news to me. Oh, cool.
yeah, I had like a little website, like just showing people that I was doing design and stuff for Airbnb. The funny thing is that Steve and I ran through the same circles because he worked at Facebook. And he lived in Silicon Valley and in and out of LA. And so him and I eventually would have, like, it wasn't completely out of the box for us to have met in within our circles, but we met through TikTok. And so that's honestly how the business was born. Just two people who had similar visions, had similar tech backgrounds, and we technically met on TikTok, and here we are today.
Yeah, I love that. Wow. I feel like did Seif reach out to you initially?
On my little website with my contact
Yep.
information,
Yep.
yeah.
He did.
Yep.
Because yeah, I feel like Seif. It's actually funny. I'm like putting these pieces together, and I've been talking to you and various team members over the years, and Seif reached out to me at one point. So it seems like yeah, Seif's a big see a video on TikTok and reach out to the person because Taylor was on Twitter, for example. John was on YouTube. So he's hearing that you were posting TikToks. I'm
I mean,
seeing I'm seeing a theme here. see reaching out to people he sees posting online.
to give Sif some credit,
He built a great team. But yeah.
well, he has a recruiting background. That's what he did for Facebook.
Okay.
So I think he's just like known to find good people and put people together. But yeah, that's how the business started.
And I
And
love
so
that with like short-term rentals being like such a new space that, like if you wanted to find someone in a normal industry, whatever, go on LinkedIn, on Sales Navigator, see someone's resume, but that's not the game with short-term rentals. Like that's not relevant. That's not going to help you find the right talent. It really is like seeing someone's creativity, you know? While short-term rentals are real estate, I think that there's a big aspect of just being creative, thinking outside the box. And I want to lean that into your current roles and responsibilities. So Techvestor, you guys started, you and Seif came together. You guys started raising money. What was the process? You buy your own short-term rental, start posting about it. And then when Seif hits you up, what was the vision there?
we both knew that we wanted to do something at scale. I think we had a similar vision doing, being able to create long-term wealth for ourselves. But the question was how and what was the best plan for that. And honestly, we didn't know at the time. I mean, Airbnb is still pretty new. I don't know if it's even technically considered an official asset class, but at the time it definitely wasn't. Like it was just something that people were not buying multiples of. And so originally when we started the business, we were like, okay, let's just do a few projects to see where we can land in terms of scalability. So we bought, I think, 7 or 8 properties that we did JV type deals with coworkers and people that we had from our tech backgrounds. And all of them were really curious about what each other, like what markets they were all investing in, because we weren't doing the same thing for each person because we were just focused on like the best deal possible for whatever partnership we were getting into. Sure. And because they were so curious about each other, we offered the idea of a fund, like, okay, well, we can just put everything in here and you guys can just benefit from it, from a blended perspective. And all of them, except for one person, they were super down for it. And so we officially said that we were going to launch a fund. And then that's actually when we raised a lot of capital in a short period of time. I think we raised like 7 or 8 million. I don't remember the exact number, but something in like 2 to 3 weeks. And him and I looked at each other and we were like, oh my God, like this is at this point, from this point on, we have to split roles. So like he had to focus on capital and like nurturing our investors and that whole process. It was like we launched the fund in like October or September, something in that year, 2021. We were like coming up on tax season. There were just so many things that needed to happen. And so our roles pretty much split. And so I focused on operations, which I had a background in, which basically means any property after we got the keys, I pretty much owned that all the way through listing it on Airbnb. And so right now, my focus is property management. So we have a pretty big team now. We have about 40 people that work for us strictly for property management, which is incredible, both on the ground and online support. And then we have a operations team, a lot of project managers, also people on the ground who support our homes, construction, renovation, designers, stagers. And I also, help manage that process alongside the team. And then honestly, any process or any new part of business that we're in, because I have that operations hat, I'm also involved in. So, and that's what I've really focused on the last 2 years, just because of how things kind of fell.
Bookkeeping? Who did the bookkeeping early on?
So,
Tracking 125 houses and all these different locations and cleaners and vendors. Sounds like my nightmare.
We have so that was back then. So now we have an incredible leadership team. It's not just Steve and I anymore. We have quite the leadership team, and we have Corbin, who does our finance. We have Austin, who leads revenue management. We have head of data. I mean, and Steve and I say this, and I wish I could like put it behind me on a plaque. There is absolutely no way that we could have ever done this without a team. Like, there's no way. It takes an army to get things done. And to be honest with you, it takes an army to get things done, but it gets better at scale. So like in the beginning, it was to get from zero. I always tell people this. I'm like, your challenge is from 0 to 10 short-term rental properties, not a problem. 10 to 30, you're like, okay, I need, it's a lot. It's a lot. Like, you learn a lot in that time period, and you definitely make the most mistakes. Once you go from that like 30 to 60, something jumps in that, when that progresses, where a lot of things start to break. I always joke around with people. I'm like, I put things in threes. Like, if you give a designer 3 homes, at some point they crack, right? There's a threshold for each person, because it's labor intensive. It's not, write a script and copy and paste. People have bandwidth, they have lives, people get sick, people have families. And so figuring that out so that our portfolio doesn't get hurt from it, and continuing to scale was a really delicate balance. And I'm really grateful that we figured it out and made it work.
Yeah, I'm so curious to learn from your experiences there. I mean, so yeah, personally, I think I'm at 25 listings. I haven't bought all of them. Some of them I just manage. Some of them are, rent and re-rent, which doesn't require as intensive of a upfront transformation. But like the ones that I do set up, like I have a flight tomorrow, setting up a 4,000 square foot house, 7 bedrooms, movie theater, 2 game rooms. Like, granted, I'm saying this even though I haven't actually been there since signing to close the documents. I'm like, oh, wow, it's been so intensive, but like I haven't actually been there. So how intensive could it be if I've literally just, been kind of like tracking orders on my phone and stuff? But that being said, like multiply that by 125, or how many properties have y'all done? And let's just say like 2023, 2022, how many properties you guys do?
I think we're at 140 now. Somewhere around.
So that's launching a property every like 4 days, like posting a new property live every week. If even like once or 2 a week. That's crazy. That's insane. That's something that like really nobody else. And I would say maybe some people, arbitrage, like, sure, you can, get 30 apartments in a building. You could furnish 30 apartments, I don't know, maybe in like 5 or 6 days if you hire enough labor and your orders, don't have issues on returns and whatnot. But like setting up 130, 150 houses in 2 years, and you guys, like, you don't just, again, it's not just like slapping furniture inside. Like, you guys renovate them. You don't just design them, every wall gets painted or wallpapered. You guys add, pickleball courts to the house. Like, these are like, it's not even like, if you just renovated a house, whatever, you just renovate a bathroom, like, that's not that like taxing, but you guys do like 17 times that, you take it to the next level. So how do you how the hell do you do that? Like, I mean, I have so many questions here, but I guess walk me through the 101. Like, you guys find, I guess you do thing in threes. So you find 3 properties to buy. What do you do from there? How does this process look like?
It's so funny because I when you average them out, you're like, yeah, 2, 3 properties like a week for a year. It's been so inconsistent with our launches. Like, one month we launched like 17 homes in a week. And then like our property management team is like, what the hell? Like, we have to
Too
pay
many
attention.
pictures.
Not only pictures, like, we take videos of our hot tubs and to turn them on because they're not all the same. And there's so
Yeah.
many details when you list a home. I'll be honest with you. Again, it goes back to team. Our team is very structured that everyone has their role and they know what they're supposed to be doing. And so when a home comes into our pipeline, a few weeks before we even get the keys to that, we know exactly what design we're doing. We've already talked to design. We know what amenities are going in. We have contractors that walk the grounds that have our best interests with pricing and all of that say, hey, this is what you're looking like. And based on what you want to do, this is when we can start. And by the time we close on a property, we have a project manager assigned to the team, we have a designer assigned to the team, we have contractors and like the all of the people that focus on like getting utilities set up, the Wi-Fi, the rings, all of the surveillance cameras. That stuff is super important to us. I will say there are 3 different parts of operations that I look at, and it's the beginning part, so it's before you buy. It's right when you buy, like, what are you doing to actually start the second that you close? There's the middle part that's kind of messy where the renovation's done and you're now starting the furniture, and that piece is usually pretty gnarly because you have the supplies and things don't get in, and you're like trying to make shift of all these last minute things that you really no control over, right? Like inflation, supply, demand, all these different things getting delayed. That was like a very 2021 thing that we faced with. And then the last part is like onboarding the property and really making sure that the home is to a certain quality to, like, at least for what our guests expect, right? Or what we post the house and the listing pictures and all that. We want to make sure that people have a good experience. And so when I look at those 3-4 stages of operations, every single person holds themselves to a certain standard of excellence on the team to make sure that, like, I'll give you a rule that we have in the company. A contractor will never start later than 48 hours after we get the keys. They will never start later than that. They start immediately after. They know when to show up. Everyone's prepared. If they don't show up, it's because someone got sick or we have bad weather. But I can tell you that we've like held ourselves to that standard where when we close, someone shows up, a ring's installed, the utilities are turned on. And I think having that meticulous timeline is what has allowed us to have launch timeframes anywhere between 8 to 14 weeks. I know that sounds like a long time. That range for really heavy construction projects like pouring concrete, relining pools, adding bedrooms, bathrooms, like those are still pretty aggressive timelines. And then
Especially
installing.
if you're doing so many at the same time. And then you're also dealing with, I'm sure for every 1,000 square feet of a house, you get you can assume that like X number of furniture items are going to come damaged or artworks or stuff like that. So then you have to deal with, even like dealing with returns. How do you do that? Like, let's say, this house that I just set up, like, I don't know, I think like 2 of the art pieces came cracked. I think one of the bed frames came without like hardware. Like, how do you deal with like returns and refunds and making sure that you like have everything you need at the properties there when you're not actually going to go there yourself?
It happens to us all the time. We have like on the ground stagers that can handle the returns later, and we will go somewhere local and like swap out things.
You just drop them off. Yeah.
And we go to like Home Goods, or we swap things out the best that we can. We've had so many learning curves in the business where like we designed something and it looks emptier than what we imagined it to be. So then we needed someone to go and like rush and buy things to fill it in impromptu. And so all these learning curves now allowed us to like have an operational team where, again, we have all these time frames. Like no longer than 48 hours, a contractor can't like be delayed to start. Or for example,
Mhm.
we have like 1,000 point, I think it's 1,200. It's 1,200 individual checklist items for a person on the ground to go through our home and make sure that everything is to that standard. And if it's not to that standard, we
Yeah.
can't list the home.
Wow. Oh my God. That
Yeah,
is like what did you like make sure we have forks, like make sure we have cups, like toiletries? Is that kind of what we're like looking at? Or is it like how nitty
that's
gritty is this checklist?
that's just like maybe 400 parts of the checklist. The other parts are like, um, I'm trying to think, does the door latch in the back work for the patio door? And does every string light bulb work? And for the seating outside, and how many extra basketballs do we have in the supply closet in case one pops? And it's 1,200 checkpoints because it allows us to buy some runway so that when we're managing the property actively over the next like 6 months, we did enough inventory to buy us some time where we
Before
are not
issues start happening?
correct. And so there's so many little things that are not perfect in that week period, like right before, just when the project manager thinks everything is like fantastic, that checklist will come back and like 100 things are not what they wanted it to be. And so that back and forth is also crazy because you see, I mean, I feel like the business of Airbnb is like moving mountains. That's really what it is. Like you go to a property, it's not what you expect. Like this is like me speaking like when you're in that last stretch of design, when you thought nothing was going to get broken, a mirror didn't fit the wall the way that like you thought it would, right? And you're scrambling. And so I think that was the hardest piece to nail down because you want to be cost efficient. Like you don't want to just waste resources or furniture or things, spend money on things that you shouldn't be spending money on, first of all, but also you want to be like cognizant of time. And so I think we've done a really good job of ironing those things out on our back end and making enough rules and process and literal like how-to books that our team gets trained on before they start.
Yeah, you guys create the standard operating procedures and all the logistical how to's in order to move these mountains literally and, well, figuratively, and but in some cases, maybe literally. So, okay, so this all makes sense. So I guess my question or what I want to dive into. So we set up the properties. You have your designer, you have your project manager, you have the furniture assemblers, you have contractors. Then you do this 1,200 point checklist. Let's just say the checklist comes back good, or maybe it took, we missed 100 things, but then you get them all taken care of. What's the process look like from there?
Then we have our team that basically looks at the photographs. We've done a lot of reshoots too. Like we've really tried to nail our
That's what
photography.
Taylor was saying. Taylor's like, we'll get two photographers and see which one does the living room the best.
Yeah, so we'll do a lot of reshoots just to like perfect those angles. And then Austin, who owns revenue management, he is the one who studies like all of our competitors and what their listings look like and how we can stick out. So he determines what pictures we want to, post as our first couple of 5. And then we start to craft the listing. And the again, because we're a bigger company now, there's so many meticulous pieces in our back end. Like we use a project management software and that gets funneled, right? It's not all of us like calling each other to do these things. Like someone gets an email, it's right in your inbox, they take it on. And so basically after that checkpoint, we get the photos, we start to create the listing. We make sure that all of our permits and our regulations and all of our licensing is ready. And then we post, we set up our listing, it's live. And then from that point on, our property management team needs to get trained on where everything is. Because I think once you set up your listing and it goes live, there's usually a lot of questions about the property because it's new. When people check in, there's no like historical data on where to find things. And so training those people within our property management team is key.
Yeah, so because they've never been there. So there's a lot of like first, I'm sure like, and this always happens to me, is like the first time you launch a property, like there's always like something that comes up because essentially, I feel like the best way to test a new property would be like go there with 20 of your friends and like have a party and like sleep in every room and like touch every switch and do everything. Cause like you'll find a couple things that like, oh, I didn't even know that like that was there. Or like, oh, that's a weird, it's kind of weird that like the water heater has a switch. It's like in the other room and you turn it and then you turn off the water heater. Like the stuff like that just like pop up every time you guys launch the property, like something random. Whereas like the only way to have known that that was a thing would be to literally, stay there yourself for a week with 10 family members.
No, because of the checklist. And that's actually what we solved for. It's like every possible case scenario we test for before we
Like flip every switch, see what every switch does.
Oh, like quite literally. And if the switch doesn't have a purpose, we cover it. Because we're like, let's just not confuse people. Let's just give people what works and what yeah.
Yeah, like I have a property. Yeah, there's like a switch for the dishwasher, and like people are always like, dishwasher's not working, and I'm like, why is there a switch there? It's an arbitrage property for that one. Like, I'm not gonna like, I don't know. It's the owner's responsibility. But if that was one I owned, yeah, that would get switched out with a wall panel. Okay, so your launch smooth sailing. Do you think that normally like a few months go and before like balls start getting like a little worn out or like things kind of start getting some wear and tear? And what's the process? So how do we optimize? I guess you have a revenue manager. How does he optimize for bookings and revenue beyond helping create a great listing? That's my first question. Like what are the ways to get booked at premiums?
Oh man, you would definitely want to interview him because it is such an art.
I'm gonna have to. I'm getting the whole team on here.
Yeah, you should interview Austin. He's literally incredible. Like he's incredible. I don't even want to speak to it because I would take it from him. But we have a whole team led by Austin, and he when I tell you he lives and breathes revenue, like that man lives and breathes revenue on a Friday night at 9 p.m., on a Saturday morning at 7 a.m. Like he's constantly looking at trends, looking at pricing online, measuring, different amenities and seasonality and holidays and, ramp time frames for listing our property. So I can't go into too much. He would be better at speaking for it, but we definitely have a system there. Quite meticulous is what we do in operations that defines our pricing.
Pricing is so important. It's so important. I can't undershoot. Like two people can have the same property. They can both use price labs. One person who like knows all the nitty gritty of looking at like pacing and seeing, all right, I need to like drop my prices these months in advance because the booking lead time, just looks at booking lead time, looks at like historical seasonality, saying, how does this season compare to last season? It looks better. All right, in that case, needs to be more aggressive on prices. It looks worse. Like people who do that extra level of diligence on pricing can like out earn the people who aren't doing that, 20%. I don't know if you agree with that characterization, but pricing, like I feel like used to be just price labs, set it, forget it. Now it's like, you have to like look at every specific season, every specific weekend and try to optimize.
Totally. And there's so much involved there. So it's not as simple as people. It's not plug and play. I think to be the best, it's never going to be plug and play, especially if you're working on houses where you don't have a ton of comps, right? Like if you're the best in your market or you're bringing a new amenity or you are, there's different angles to it for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I need to. Yeah, I just put down my note of Austin. Need to reach out to Austin because I would love to hear. So you guys have things up. You're optimized on pricing. How do you maintain 5-star reviews across? I can only imagine how difficult it is to maintain good reviews across. I mean, it's hard enough across whatever the 25 listings I have. I can only imagine the 130 plus that you have on your account.
Yeah, we have obviously like a lot of reporting, but we also have systems in place to track those things. Like we have a review tracker that anything that's less than or higher than, we actually go in and we collect data on it. Like, okay, on this property, we've had the same 3 complaints. So it's now time to like address that or figure out where it's coming from, or someone needs to go fly and check out the property and see if there's anything that we can do to make it better. Funny that I mentioned that, because next week we're all flying to the Poconos, because we haven't checked our properties out, in at least me, right? I haven't been since the summer. And so we're going to go check it out and really look at reviews and then go in our properties and see how we feel about it. I think Airbnb, I think people forget that it's hospitality. And at the end of the day, it's so service based, and you should be checking and making sure that what you're listing is what it feels like. It's an experience. It's more than just the real estate itself. And so outside, when we look at reviews on a weekly basis, we have a call just to go through it. Every review matters to us. Also, the same thing with like supplies, things missing, lost and found, things that should be replenished and replaced, like smells in the house. Also something that we meticulously track. And I think it's honestly an answer that no one likes to hear. It's like, it's just keeping up with it, right? It's just having the system and the reminders and the people that have the best interest in your portfolio to keep up with the task at hand. There's really no simple answer, because unfortunately we're in the business of people, right? So like someone can come in and destroy your house. It is what it is. So someone has to constantly be checking and making sure that there are eyes on the property, whether it's on the ground, through reporting, through one of us traveling, like at any given time.
So I'm sure, you said one person can come in and destroy your house. I'm sure you have, I mean, I have my stories. I'm sure you have to have your stories. I guess what is an Airbnb horror story that you have?
Oh man. We have I like, what flavor do I want to pick from? Um
It's
we
a
had
Tuesday.
a Tuesday. I'm trying to think. I mean, we've heard of parties and stuff like that. I feel like that's just boring once you get into the
Yeah.
Airbnb. We had a squirrel infestation. That was fun. We didn't figure that out till later on. So we found out that like there were all these
Mhm.
squirrels living in our roof, and we had to figure out like how to get them out of our property. So that was one thing. We've had,
Mhm.
neighbor complaints, and I think probably the worst, actually, now that I'm thinking, is one of our propane tanks it was empty. This was like one of our first properties ever, actually.
Mhm.
And apparently with propane, if you leave it empty, it starts to smell. And then you need to go and refill it. That's like to let you know that you need to go refill it. And so we had no idea. And we got neighbor complaints saying that people were feeling faint and they were going to die because of a gas smell. So I freaked out, because that's like really serious if that's the case, even though like we knew we did everything right. So I was really puzzled. And I show up to the property, and it was like a swarm of like 10 angry neighbors. And we called the propane company. They came over, and the guy was like, "This is natural gas. Like, there's no way that any of you are going to feel faint or feel the way that you're feeling." And he ended up filling the tank, and the smell went away. But that was just like, that was a scary, like as an owner, that was a scary experience that really, I'm glad we learned in the beginning to check all of our utilities and make sure that everything is up to speed with where we want them to be, because that would just be terrible if that had gone the other way, right? But that was, yeah,
Right.
we've had a lot.
Okay, so propane parties. I guess any more
Squirrels.
recent ones, or any I guess ones that have. I know you're on the ball now, but not saying you weren't on the ball before, but you really got your T's and dotted I's crossed and whatnot. But any kind of like recent horror stories?
I can't think of anything right now, but those two are definitely the most memorable.
Gotcha, guys, and those are. I mean, again, you probably had, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of guests at this point stay at the properties, thousands of stays. If those are kind of some of the bad stories, think about it. Like, is it that bad? You hear stuff online that's. I mean, I've dealt with like honestly what I think is like kind of the worst. Knock on wood, totally knock on wood. I don't want to say that and then next thing, but even in those situations, like, I mean, I had like a really, really big party that like people shot like bullets through the windows and
Oh
like
my gosh.
bashed, yeah, and like jumped from like the rafters into like other guest arms, like pretty much like Project X stuff. And there was like, it was during COVID, and there was like a truck event, like a monster truck event in town, and like all the monster trucks, or like the big massive trucks, had like rolled up to the property and like done a bunch of donuts and stuff, and beer cans were like a mile down the road. Like there was some crazy stuff. COVID was definitely like the craziest time because bars were closed. So I think a lot of the party issues from Airbnbs and all those stories like during COVID were definitely like reflective of that time period. But even in that situation, had like 4 handyman go over for like 6 hours. Well, we had to remove all the trash, so we had like 4 people just like picking up beer cans and trash and all that stuff, and then like 4 handyman who were just like chipping out whatever was, fixing the window, chipping out whatever was messed up, and just putting in something new. And it was like everything was back in shape 4 days later or something after the party. So in real estate and stuff, like in short-term rentals, Airbnbs, like when there's issues, they can be taken care of. What Sabrina's job is, and what her team's job is to make sure the issues don't happen from the start. And that, everything possible can be examined. Is that kind of the way you look at it? Is like, we're just going to get in front of everything so that we don't have to play from behind?
Quite literally. Like if I can, we just play goalie like the entire time, trying to make sure that like nothing bad happens. So I wish I had a better story. Maybe Austin or Seif will have better stories than I do, at least from my most recent memory. But yeah, I mean, it's something that we take pride in, right? Like we shouldn't have those experiences, especially being this big. So definitely, if I were to say anything from this business that I've learned, it's like, think twice, because it's probably going to happen. And so prepare and put process in place so it doesn't. Like I used to be like, oh, I'll do it later. And now I'm like, if we don't do this now, it's probably going to happen like within a business day.
Yeah. And then make sure things don't happen again. Things happen once, all right, whatever, but come up with a process so that doesn't happen the second time. So yeah, who does your guys? So you have the revenue manager, you have the teams creating the listings, you have the team setting up the properties. Who then, who do you guys have messaging at this point?
So we have a team. We have like our head of guest experience, and she manages a team of people who are basically like our online support. And then we have another section of property management, and they are called like our controller team. And so they deal with all the like the inbound calls that we get from guests for things that need to happen on the ground. So like no toilet paper, dirty cleans, or an extra clean, or a door not working, something needing to be replaced, anything of that nature. I mean, 140 properties. We're, I think, on track this year. We'll probably do over like 80 to 100,000 guests in our homes collectively to date. It's just like a lot of volume. And so we need 2 teams, and they essentially communicate with each other. So one handles all guest communications. We're not really big on like crazy automated messaging. We actually like that someone is there to support. And so we basically have 24-hour support at any given time, 7 days a week. Brooke, she's fantastic. She manages our guest experience. And then we have Andrew, and he manages like all the people on the ground. And to be honest with you, they are both just as busy, and they manage 2 completely different sides of the property management arm. And we definitely need both. Like they crush it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you need, I'm sure you guys have so many vendors, electricians, plumbers, handyman. And, well, those vendors, they get sick or they're out of town or shit happens. So, I mean, that's the name of the game, is boots on the ground. And then also conversely, high quality guest communication, making sure that guests are responded to quickly, that, they don't think they're talking to a robot. I totally agree with the not having it be too. I feel like people like try to automate their messages so much, and they're like, oh, Airbnb is like automated. Like these messages, are responded to with AI or whatever. or here are all the canned messages. Like I don't, if I see like, so I use virtual assistants, which I'm sure the person in charge of your guest communication team has resources around the clock, around the world. But like, if I see a message that I think is like AI, I'm like, I get pretty angry because you can kind of tell, it looks robotic. So you want personalized messages that sound like they're from a human being. I don't know. Do you agree with that? That you want people to think they're interfacing with a human being?
Wouldn't you agree that like the ROI in Airbnbs and the details? Like that's really like just take it to like super basic. Like it's in the messaging, it's in the cord hiders when you show up to a property and you're like, oh wow, they actually hid their TV cord. Like that's like a little touch, right? It's like nice to see that. I know that sounds like so basic. Or like there's extra wine openers, or like it's all about the details. It's like the finishes, the smells, the quality of the mattresses, the easy check-in experiences, the amenities actually working. Like it's all about the details. That's my world. It's making sure that all of those little things happen on the front end so that we don't, it doesn't hurt later on when we're dealing with gas and the property's already live and we're seeing issues on the back end.
Looks like I gotta hide more cords. I think that's something I gotta write down. I like to Photoshop out the cords. I like to Photoshop them out, but I don't actually hide them. I get great reviews though, so if no one's like ever came at me for that, and they're usually happy because we really do. If there's an issue, like we go through heaven and hell and high water to alleviate that issue. And I think that's really what they appreciate is like if they point out an issue, like you're on it. For the most part. For the most part, some people aren't going to say a single thing, and they're just going to complain about anything under the sun. But yeah, you're right on. So, all right. So now we've kind of gone through that life cycle, setting up the property, having it maintain 5 reviews, so then it continues to like do well over time. I'm curious. So this is kind of my personal curiosity because I'm at a point with properties where if they've been up like 2 years, you start to kind of like definitely like the wear and tear on the furniture, stuff like that starts to go up. Like, how do you like start ordering new furniture after like a certain time period, or do you guys have like warehouses with backups? Like, what's the process for, kind of like maintaining the homes or maintaining the furnishings, over extended periods of time?
So each major market that we're in, we have on the ground personnel, and they're called market managers. And so what they do is they will go to each of our properties in those markets that we're like super high density in, and they'll go check. It's like another 1,000-point checklist, but like for properties that are already live. So they'll literally go like sit on a couch and like see if like the little wooden feet on the couch are like loose. Thing with our homes, I know that sounds crazy because it's like there's so many things that we have baked into our business, but with properties and replenishing items, I think it's just a matter of sending someone there, having them test every little thing. And we've had to replace some stuff for sure. Like we don't love mid-century modern furniture anymore because those wooden feet on everything just break. And the thing is with our properties, we allow pretty high occupancy. Like our properties hold anywhere between, 8 to 20 people. And so when you have churn like that all of the time, yeah, like if 100,000 people are using your furniture across your portfolio a year, you're gonna see that. And so we send people out to check on stuff like every 30 days in between check-ins, every quarter, to be honest with you. And we will, if something feels weird, like or not 100%, we'll fix it in hopes that it gains us some runway with that, whatever that is. Or we'll replace it, and then we'll actually go back to our operations leg, and we say, hey, we're never buying that thing again. So actually, our homes have gotten better over time purely because of that.
Yeah, and your homes have definitely gotten better over time in terms of how they look. Because I've been, I think I saw your face first pop up probably like 3 years ago or 2.5 years ago, whatever. I saw your first list. I'm like, oh, that's Sabrina. Like I know her. Like, oh, cool. And then now I'm like, I was joking with Taylor about this, but I was doing like people, kind of like a live training and showing how my properties were doing year over year. And the place where I've definitely had the biggest drop off in my portfolio is like really the only place where you guys are also located, being South Florida. I was looking at my South Florida property and I was like, yeah, it seems like, this house was doing well and we set it up as probably one of the best properties in the area. But now there's like a lot of inventory that's came in that's like really, really high quality, mini golf, mini putt, all the games, stuff like that. And I just zoomed out and I saw one that looked good in the pictures and I clicked it and I was like, oh, that's Sabrina. I guess Techvestor is here. That explains that. That explains. Thank you for I think that property is like a 20% drop in revenue. So thank you for that. But yeah, when Techvestor comes to your neighborhood, hide your kids, hide your wife, because they are knocking you out of the top 10%. You are going to I think Taylor's called it Uncle Bob's properties. But even if you think you have a nice property, their property is going to be an Uncle Bob. Your property is going to be an Uncle Bob property compared to one that they're gonna furnish and design. So I guess in a way, kudos to you. Also, keeps me I gotta be in small enough markets where you guys never would want to come. Because you guys try to do like in each market you're doing what, like 20, 30, 40, 50 properties at this point?
Yeah, something around like 20 to 40 kind of has been our medium to dense range. Yeah.
So like you wouldn't, if there's a place where you're like, oh, we could set up 5 of these, but then we might, run into some issues. It like wouldn't be worth your while to do 5 of them.
We try things. We have some markets where we have 5 of them, like Memphis. Actually, no, I think we have a little bit more than 5. I think we have like 8 homes there or something. But we didn't intent on making it a huge market. Same for Panama City Beach. We don't have a lot of homes there. We have like 5 homes there, less than that. So we've tried. It's just whatever. We're deal and data hungry. So it's wherever that makes sense.
Got it. Okay, so all right, for you guys listening, there's more reason to be scared. Small markets, you're not protected in small markets. Anyways, all right, I'm mostly just joking, but now I won't be able to sleep at night now. Okay, cool. So you set the properties up, you make sure, you play goalie, so you're not going to have issues. When you have issues, you deal with them. So I'm trying to kind of go through this whole life cycle here. And then I guess for you guys and what your goal is eventually you sell the properties and you make a profit there. I'm just trying to go through this whole life cycle of operations on the call. So what's that look like? Or is that just like that's a later thing? We're not right now today. We're just focused on operating everything.
Right now we're focusing, I can't talk, on operational excellence. So like our CapEx costs, our OpEx costs, our, what we spend in the little details on supplies and the refunds that we give to guests. Like we're really focused on nailing that down, at least from my world. But the business all has the same goals, right? Like everyone's trying to just double down on what we've done already and make sure it performs and really knock it out of the park. And I think that goes hand in hand with selling. So like, for example, something that we're working on is a internal report for all of our houses that has every single appliance warranty information. Like literally the most boring thing I could tell you on this podcast about like appliance information and how old our roof is. But if and when we sell, like whenever that time is, it's important that we have all of this, right? Because I mean, this too. You're not selling your home to a family. Those days are done. You're selling your home to an institution, an investor, whatever that is. And so you're going to need all this information later on. All the details, all the boring stuff, all the things that people don't care about are really, really important when it comes to that time. Because obviously when you want to sell, it's during a good time. It makes sense for all parties and you need to move quickly. So we're doing what any business should be doing, focusing on the business, and that time when it comes, it comes.
Yeah, I'm actually in the process of selling the first property, or selling the first property of which I'm like an investor in. This is actually the only property of that I've ever invested in where I'm not the one leading the deal. But still, it's like an interesting process selling. Like, I'm like, wow, selling. Like, I've never been on this side before. Like, wow, this is, they want an extension on diligence. Like, do I give it to them or do we give it to them? It's like, yeah, like they have questions you've got to answer about the property and the different, warranties and stuff like that. So I totally get what you're saying. And that's selling one property. If you guys are looking to sell 140 properties, I mean, that's going to be a process and a half. I could totally imagine. So kudos for gearing up for that. So we've kind of just went through the entire life cycle of what you guys are doing. I mean, did we miss anything? I know we're 50 minutes in here. So is there any holes in this story?
There's so many details. But I think we covered a lot of the basics. And I'm really happy that I was able to share all the things that we've done. Cause I don't think that what we do is super detailed. And then when I like regurgitate it, I'm like, oh my God, we do so many things, so many little things.
Yeah, and I'm telling you guys, if you saw their property or just saw the listing, saw those first 5 photos that Austin put up, you would understand the attention to detail. Every time I see your guys' listings, I'm like, I gotta level my stuff up. Like I have not been intentional enough about. I mean, the new property I'm setting up right now, like I've definitely, a play structure, for example. I've never done a play structure, but I was like, oh, they did a play structure. There has to be something behind that. But then I asked Taylor about it, and he told me that if you just do the basic $900 play structure, that really doesn't do anything. You need to do like the $2,000 play structure with 2 slides. And I was like, damn it, I did the basic play structure, but just the details. That's my point. Is just like the details, like the little intentionality on everything is what really adds up. And I guess so in 2024, in order to kill, I mean, if you hear the chat online, oh, it's harder, Airbnb is dying. Like, what do you, like, are you optimistic about growing into the future? And like, I guess what gives you that confidence? And I guess what are do you have a number on how many going to do this year, next year, or anything like that?
I think everyone's trying to figure that out with like capital raising and interest rates. There's a lot that we've learned, just being in this business for a year that was considered to be like a super peak high year and then now entering some uncharted territory. But I think we're still pretty optimistic. I think, to be honest with you, we're optimistic because we have proven track record and we know that we deliver a really good product and we've been delivering really great returns for our investors. So I think, anyone in the space looking to diversify their portfolio and get in the space, like we're still here, we're still raising money, our fund's still open for new investors. And I think, our goal is to have similar years. Last 2 years, we raised, around 40-ish million, 30-ish million. So I'd love to do the same this year, but I understand that markets change and that capital raising has its peaks and valleys. So I think that's the goal, but you never know what's gonna turn out.
Got it. Okay. And then so that capital raising standpoint's unique to your business because you guys are a fund. But in terms of the opportunities to buy out there, like you're seeing them. Like if you're gonna get $40 million today, you could, or 40 more million because you've continuously got 40 million. You would how quickly do you think you could deploy that 40 million?
We could deploy it.
And do you think the deals would be great, like good deals?
Yeah, and we still see good deals now. I think it's not as crazy as it was, 2 years ago, but we have internal conversations all the time, just purely about like bandwidth and like what we can support. Because really what it comes down to is when you have capital like that come in, which we've had, large chunks of capital like that come in, the first thing it impacts is operations, right? Who's doing it? How fast can we get a property up? How quickly can we get it to start producing revenue? How quickly can those investors get their distributions back? So that's what, at least what I look at when capital comes in. And so we're always sizing the business to how much we have, how much capital we get at any given time. And to this day, I feel confident that we can support it. But I also feel like there's still deals out there, at least that fit our fund model, right? Not for everyone.
Got it. Okay. So I guess what is the point? I mean, this is I'm a curious thing. Like, what do you think what's too much money? Because I was talking to Taylor about how if you were a hedge fund and you were given $150 million to buy bonds, you would have maybe like an analyst, you're giving an associate, an MD, and you'd bring the deal to the investment committee and they would say, all right, this is fine, we'll buy these bonds. And then you talk to a broker and you buy it. Like that's the process to deploy $150 million if you're buying bonds in a hedge fund. However, for you to deploy $100 million, that's a totally different ball game, and obviously a lot harder and a lot more impressive in my opinion. But yeah, is there a dollar amount where you're like, we could efficiently deploy $75 million, but like $1 billion is, that's a lot. That's way too much. I guess do you have that amount or number in mind?
I look at it from a property perspective. I'm like, okay, at any given time, we can probably do like 40 or 50 properties, something around there. Like last month, we were doing like 30 properties, something around there. So I look at it
how
like
many you can set up at a time.
Correct. Because honestly, that's what it comes down. That's what it comes down to. It's what are you deploying, what are you buying, and how much can you set up in a responsible period of time. So I look at it from number of properties, not so much the number of the quantity of money, just because, because the property prices change. I mean, we're never buying $2 million properties, right? So there is like a range that we buy in, but I think we've never had check sizes that have hit like that, past that, like that range where we've been in that 30 property arena, but I'd be scared past like 50, right? Because it just means like more training, more hiring, more visit. It just puts strain on the team. But I don't think we're scared of capital. It's just a matter of bandwidth. That's all.
Got it. Okay. All right. So $10 billion, y'all, just as long, 40 properties a month. Okay, cool. So what is, like, maybe it's someone who's starting out, maybe someone who has a few properties and they want to grow their portfolio. What is the biggest pro tip you have for short-term rental investors?
Ooh, my God. I feel like that puts me on the spot. My biggest pro tip, I would say definitely study who's doing well in the market that you're in and why. And the days of boring properties are over. And if you're thinking of skipping out on certain amenities because you want to be in that like middle of the page kind of Airbnb listing, I think those are the people that are gonna go in either direction in this new market that we're in. And so my pro tip is to really study why people do well, in save the money for really good amenities and like invest in the details. You will thank yourself later by 10x. That's my pro tip.
I agree. I think that's a good one. And yeah, I told Taylor, I'm in the process of trying to level up some of because to be honest, I think my listings, when I set each one up, was like a 90th percentile property in that market at that time. But a lot of it was, the white walls, very clean, very minimalist, blues, grays, blacks. And now I'm like, seeing y'all where it's like the pinks and the oranges and the purples and so much color all over the place, so much wallpaper, so many murals. And I'm like, damn, I'm like, all right, I gotta, and like the backyards, maybe 2 years ago, it was like, all right, a hot tub plus a fire pit checks the box. But now it's like, that's not enough. You've got to have hot tub, fire pit, big chess, bowling, cornhole, string lights everywhere, not just string lights in one place. You have to have string lights around the entire backyard. So those details are things that I'm trying to, the new one I'm setting up, like I'm definitely applying there, but I'm trying to also like level up. I guess, and this my last question here, I know we're hitting the hour point, but like, do you guys refresh listings after like a year or two, or really just set it up at the beginning and ride?
Our goal is to set it up in the beginning and ride. We've learned some properties do better than others, like A/B testing stuff, and then we're like, sure, damn it, we got to go back and fix the other ones because we just know it's going to perform better, like it's worth it. I will say on that note, it cracks me up that you said it, that the design thing, because even now internally, like we're still figuring out the design. So like I'll look at a new color that'll come in and I'm like, guys, this is just like obnoxiously bright. Like, I don't think we could go this direction. And then my team's like, well, you went that direction last time, like with this color, like what makes them different? I'm like, I don't know. We're not ready to go. Like there's levels to ridiculousness with properties. And we even like scare ourselves sometimes. We're like, oh my God, we're just gonna launch it as is and we're gonna see if it does well. And usually it does. Like the more vibrant
Crazy. The more crazy you go, the more it stands out from the white walls competition.
Totally. But our internal team, they like roll their eyes. They're like, we don't understand what bright means. Like we're confused. So we're still figuring it out.
Well, awesome. Well, I'm excited to continue to every time now, whether it be John or Taylor is like LinkedIn or John on Instagram, Taylor on like LinkedIn or your LinkedIn. I stay in the loop of what the new listings are, because then another level of feeling insecure about not being bright enough, not having my. I'm just kidding. I have good listings. John or Bianchi tells me, he's like, I'm only friends with you because I respect your portfolio. He was like, I hate, and I think Taylor, you guys like love, and I think that's cool that you guys have built a team of people who like love what they're doing and are like super prideful about what you guys are doing, and then really care about the details and the process, and like really are like super passionate about hospitality and short-term rentals and providing a great experience, because that's why you guys are succeeding and scaling when the suits are not. Like the institutions, I don't know if you saw the article about TPG. I referenced it with Taylor, but they came into South Florida and they left. They tried to do short-term rentals, like buy 20, 30, 50 houses, and they dropped the ball at it. And it's because, their team probably just your team. It's really the team. I don't know if you agree with that or disagree.
100. I'll say it again. It's the team and it's in the details. This is not multifamily. Let's throw in a couple washer dryers and a subway backsplash and call it a day. Like it's a lot of work. That's why
that sounds nice. That sounds very appealing at this point.
Yeah. Remember the deals where it was just upgrade a couple of appliances and slap on $70 on rent? It's like, this is not, you're in the wrong business.
Yeah. This is like you do, like, you paint the wall the right color, you do a mural, and then you charge $70 more a night, multiplied by 365 days a year. You make tens of thousands of dollars or more versus like $100 more, which is cool, which is why this game, you were able to quit your job and go full time and do this. And I was too. It's the cash flow. But all right. So folk who want to follow your journey, where can they find you?
The easiest place to find me is on TikTok or LinkedIn, just under Sabrina Guler. And then obviously, if you guys want to check out Techvestor and all the crazy things we're doing, I'm just starting to post a lot of my journey on behind the scenes and what makes our properties awesome on LinkedIn. And then obviously you can check us out at techvestor.com.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, Sabrina, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. All right, everybody. Well, that's a wrap. Stay tuned for the next episode of the Short Term Rental Pros podcast.